This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
So I'm standing here at 30 Hudson Yards. Warner Media is in right there. That's CNN's corporate headquarters. We're in New York City. Jim Sciutto just walked out. Funny enough, I asked him about the videos we have just obtained of a CNN director, Charlie Chester, on tape. For years, we've heard that CNN is the most trusted name in news, but a CNN director is on tape telling us that they're propaganda, helping a certain political candidate, employees admitting what we've always known to be true. This time, it's on tape.
And it's not the first time it's on tape. That is James O'Keefe, founder of Project Veritas. You recall not too long ago, they were taping and listening in on conference calls in the morning between the CNN president, Zucker, and members of the news team as they were deciding each day what stories we're going to cover and how we're going to cover them. This is the very fact that the president of the network is listening in and taking part and giving directions on what should be covered. That is way, way out of bounds. There's no journalistic integrity when the boss of the company says we should cover this or says, nah, that's not worth our time. Who's going to stand up and fight it? You might once, maybe twice, probably won't be around for a third time. But that was exposed at that point. And after listening for several weeks, Jim actually cut in on the phone call and said, this James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, I'd like to ask, and suddenly they want to shut down the conference call. They moved to a different number. Obviously, they got exposed by that point anyway. So now this latest operation, I want to make sure you understand something. It is again, a secretly recorded video this time, featuring a CNN employee identified as Chester. Let me get Charles Chester. Now, he is identified as a network technical director, CNN technical director. According to Chester, I'm just one step, being a technical director, just one step below a director. I don't know for sure how their hierarchy is set up at CNN, but let me give you a base setup for stations. You have someone who produces a newscast. Now, there may be an executive producer above them and a news director above that. But then one producer is pretty much responsible for that one newscast. You might have a director responsible for that one newscast. The director, in many cases, and I'm not saying I know for fact reference CNN, but I'm trying to give you the lay of the land here. The director normally is the one who's calling the shots as to what cameras, what tapes to roll, and so forth, based off the format as laid out by the producer. The technical director, which is what apparently Charlie Chester would be, is the one actually pushing the buttons and bringing the video up, putting chyron and wording on the screen, taking it down, maybe controlling sound, probably not just sound, but they have someone else doing that, but at network level. But that's not really a decision-making position. I want to make sure you understand that. Even if you're a director, you're not really the deciding person. But if you know what the game plan is, you're looking for every way you can implement it and help push it along. And that is valuable. Valuable in the sense that if you're trying to slant coverage, and I'm not talking about by mistake leaving something out and by mistake ignoring something should have been included. But if you go in with a particular angle and we're going to slice and dice it to come out at this end, then you're slanting the coverage. You can't put everything into a story all the time. You just can't. If I were doing a story on TV and we're doing a story about a pro-life march, we may not even bother calling or getting a response from the anti-abortionists. Those pro-abortion, because we're just focusing on the march and that kind of stuff. But now, if you're debating two different issues, then you probably need balance on both sides. If you can't do it in every specific newscast and every specific story, then you try over a period of time. That's good journalism. And you can still be questioning when you're making your best effort. I know I have been, and I've been actually accused, by members of my church, upset that why would you do a story like that? Where's your Christian values? Does God want me to be a better Christian or a better news reporter at the time? That was my answer back to them, and I know the answer. And you do too. He wants me to be a better Christian. But the job, I still want to keep it in balance of the way I thought it should be done. It cost me some fellowship with some other Christians, but I can't help that at that point. So Project Veritas, again, claiming that they've exposed this. Now, they have an undercover video, and I think it was someone posing as an employee of CNN also with them, just trying to get an understanding of what happens behind the scenes. And Charlie Chester, I don't know if he's trying to just embellish himself and talk about how great he is, but he also talked about the network itself and the goal and the plan and the intent and the slant in the Trump 2020 election was to destroy Donald Trump. Here's part of that interview.
Look what we did. We got Trump out. I am 100% going to say it. And I 100% believe it, that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have got voted out. I really don't think so. I came to CNN because I wanted to be a part of that.
So Chester says that CNN is responsible for getting Trump out of office and helping Biden through his term. Listen to this tape. Chester and Hoffman believe CNN managed to get Trump out of office, their words, and Chester calls CNN propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, like Trump, we did it. Like when Trump was, I don't know, like his hand was shaking or whatever. We brought in like so many medical people to like all tell a story that like it was all speculation. That he was like neurological damage, like that he was losing it. He's unfit to, whatever. We were creating a story there that we didn't know anything about. So that's I think that's propaganda. We had nothing else to run with at that time. We were like just taking shots off the bow, just hoping something would hit.
That's pretty much what they were doing all the time. If they didn't have anything, let's just fire a shot off the bow. We'll hit something. And we'll have our audience tag along with us. And we'll do everything we can to embarrass Trump, conservatives, and all that group. So it wasn't a news organization. At that point, it was a political hatchet job every step of the way. We've all known and suspected that, not just of CNN, but others as well. And yes, you can accuse Fox of that. And again, that depends upon your spin as to which one and what time and so forth you're dealing with. But you heard him talk about that if they saw pictures that Trump's hand was shaking at some point. I remember the time after addressing West Point, he starts walking down the ramp. It's kind of a steep ramp, and he's walking gently, slowly to make sure he doesn't slip. I think that's a good idea. But they were mocking that as well. But when it came to Joe Biden, they had a plan on how they would always prop up Uncle Joe. Listen.
The whole thing of him running during the entire run for the campaign, showing him jogging, was obviously a deflection of his aid, and they're trying to make him I'm healthy.
Is that what we did? I don't know. Like, what do you mean?
We would always show shots of him jogging, and that I'm healthy, blah, 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 and him in aviator shades, and you paint him as a young geriatric.
Young geriatric. Yeah, he's at that age, but he's young. And look at him. He's jogging. He's out and fit and so forth compared to Trump. And Biden obviously looks more fit than Donald Trump as far as physical stature. Mentally was another issue, but they didn't want to get into that, so they're showing visuals that would show him jogging. And as he said, with the aviator shades, he looked, man, it's a Tom Cruise scene. Put it with Top Gun. We're ready to go. Chester, again, we're talking about the Project Veritas tape, and the guy identified as Charlie Chester, a CNN technical director. He's not directly making decisions. I cannot stress that again. Doesn't mean he doesn't have input, but he also knows how the input is put in front of them and how they're supposed to react. I'll give you a specific example in a moment. But even his father was saying, watching their coverage, he said, you're going to end up and you're going to create an opportunity for Kamala. That is basically the attitude that his father was giving him. And Chester said, well, yeah, that might happen. Listen.
So many arguments about, my dad be you're voting in Kamala Harris because he's going to die from the presidency. And I'm like, that kind of die.
Right. I don't think he's gonna
But
die.
I'm okay with that.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I think she could
She'd
be
probably
a bitch.
be better, but
Probably could be a bitch in like a board meeting, and you'd hate her as a boss. But she's real and better than what we've had.
Right.
Regardless,
yeah.
I don't see. I think we got him through this term.
In other words, we got Biden, we can get him through this term, and then we're in place to promote Kamala. Well, it's not just the next election coming up. I mean, they have long-range goals. I mean, yes, the election, the next time around, will be critical, and not just 4 years away, the next 2 years. The election's coming up at midterm. You know CNN will be in play in that, as all the big tech companies, as they have been in the past. And that's why the other day, Senator Josh Hawley and Senator Cruz introducing this bill to get control of some of these corporations and big tech that are trying to dictate how we vote, election laws. And, of course, at the congressional level, you got the Democrats on the House pushing a bill to nationalize all elections, so they will decide at the national level how your election goes, even at the school board meetings. And CNN has obviously another focus on the horizon. And this one we've already seen presented in various ways. But they're looking at the fact that if we don't have really a political animal to go against, reference Trump, we don't have anything that we can really take down that way, well, we need another target. We need something where we can get a consensus behind us. Again, back to the Project Veritas tape.
Chester didn't just take credit for Trump's loss. He also alleges it was CNN's, quote, focus. They were focused on getting Trump out of office. Chester also believes that in the current news cycle, there is, quote, COVID fatigue. Chester saying that CNN has a game plan to fix that fatigue.
I think there's just like a COVID fatigue. So like whenever a new story comes up, they're going to latch onto it. They've already announced in her office that once the public will be open to it, we're going to start focusing mainly on climate, like global warming.
Do you hear that? He said, even though he's not making the decision, he's making it clear in this undercover video. Charles Chester, a technical director at CNN, we've already been told in the office, the next thing we're going to start focusing on is climate. In the next segment, you're going to hear them flesh that out as to why that's going to be a big deal and how they plan on playing it against you. But let me give you some insight that he added that's not part of that tape you're hearing. He is talking about that the head of the network, that'd be Zucker, was kind of upset with the number of times they put up the death count through COVID while Trump was in office. He said, I've been in the room, he's talking about in the control room, many times when my director, the guy that tells me, take it down, take the numbers down, I take it down, we get a phone call. The bat phone rings in the back, literally a red phone. Like the special red phone rings, they pick it up, the producer picks it up, every so often they put it on the speaker. It's like the head of the network being like, there's nothing that you're doing right now that makes me want to stick. That means stick around and stay. Put the numbers back up because that's the most enticing thing we had. And Chester is apparently referring to CNN President Jeff Zucker with his hand on the network coverage. Put those death numbers up there. Show how many are dying under Trump. And then, of course, how to play you into another fear. That part of the story coming up.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
This ain't no place for no hero. This ain't no place for no better man. This ain't no place for no hero who call home. This ain't no place for.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
What does that look like?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I have a feeling it's just going to be like constantly showing videos of like decline in ice and weather warming up and like the effects it's having on the economy and really
Who
talking
decides that?
the head of the network, like just
Who's that? Is that Zucker?
Zucker, yeah. I imagine that he's got his council and they've all like discussed like where they think
So that's like the next.
pandemic like story like that will beat to death. But that one's got longevity. You know what I mean? It's not like there's a definitive ending to the pandemic, or like it'll taper off to a point that it's not a problem anymore. I think it's going to take years, so they'll probably be able to milk that for quite a bit.
Milk it as much as they can to get more ratings. They think they'll drive ratings if they do the next big project of global warming and everything associated with it. And the whole idea, of course, is to strike fear into you. We'll come back to that in a moment. But he, at one point, that again, that's James Chester or Charles Chester. Let me correct myself here because I've got his name all Charlie Chester. I'm seeing both Charles and Charlie. Charlie Chester, a technical director at CNN, caught on undercover video with Project Veritas, talking, I guess, to another CNN employee, maybe newly hired, that's just trying to understand the lay of the land. Sitting there having a beer, whatever, doesn't seem to be drunk, but he's kind of wants to tell her, I know everything. I know how it goes. Does he have a job? Did you ask me, does he have a job still? Well, I don't know. That's a good question. Of course, keep in mind, even Zucker got caught on a Project Veritas. He still has a job. But, of course, he's the head of the news network. Well, Chester said, referenced COVID, he said, just gangbusters with ratings, right? That's why we constantly have the death toll. He said, I have a major problem with how we're tallying how many people die every day. But again, as you heard him say a moment ago, if we take the numbers off the screen, we get a call on the bat phone, say, put the numbers back up. No one wants to watch if you don't have the numbers up there. And that apparently coming, he's alluding to CNN President Jeff Zucker calling during the newscast and say, put the number dead dying on Trump's watch back on the screen. Why? Well, it's not just to make Trump look bad. It's to strike more fear. So we have a network that's not peddling any real journalism. They're peddling fear.
You said it's going to be like the new COVID.
I feel like, well, that's the way it was built. Unless that was just a call to arms to get people to start writing and then we'll assess it. I don't know. But
do you think it's going to be just like a lot of like fear? Like, time it.
Yeah, fear sells.
Yeah, fear sells. He knows that. He said it helps with ratings. And he added, fear really drives our numbers. It does, The happiest days in news, people, I would imagine, turn it off. Fear is the thing that keeps you tuned in. And again, he said the head of the network decides how long the death count on COVID would stay on the screen. So if they're losing the impetus of COVID because we're slowly getting control of it, plus we have Biden now in charge, let's don't make that big of a deal out of COVID. We're all in glory and happy lands now. Bubbles and ice cream everywhere for everyone. By the way, Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe said he is planning to sue CNN for defamation. James O'Keefe suing them. He said they had a host lied about us about some information. He said we're going after actual malice is a standard in the U.S. We believe we can win against CNN. So he said, I am going to sue CNN for defamation. And he goes on to say that a lot of people need to start suing the media for defamation. He said, James O'Keefe talking about CNN and the rest of the media, it's disgraceful what they're doing. It's disgusting. And now they're caught. There are apparently going to be more installments of that Project Veritas showing exactly everything that was going on behind the scenes. But what you've heard already gives you a good indication. You knew it was never a viable network with integrity when it came to news. And now you've looked at how they make the sausage. How do you like it now? Coming up next, Dr. Fauci saying, yeah, it's good we stopped the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I don't think it'll frighten people. I don't think.
You can hear podcast of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.